Hey, welcome back and check this thing out. It's my random dub throw generator. Let's just let this ride for a minute. You can hear that those snares are being thrown around into a bunch of different delays and reverbs and spaces and textures. There's a nice one. And I just think that's a great way to get something started. I'm inspired by surprises. I'm inspired by changing, shifting things that I'm not necessarily in control of. I think that just sets a nice stage for other things to exist in and gets my juices cooking. So let's look at how this thing is working, and then we'll build one from scratch. The idea is basically that I've got a return channel here, and in that return channel are several different echoes and reverbs and effects available to me. Every time a snare hits, it's randomly selecting one of those chains, and every time a snare plays, there is a % probability chance that the snare will be sent into this chain. So if we come over here, we can see that I have this, this is just an expression control. I made this preset randex that's just all set to randoms to save myself some time. But we can see that only on the D1, the note where the snare is, will a MIDI note trigger the expression control to send a random value to the chain selector over here on the reverb. And then in our MIDI clip here, you can see that up top I have this one called send trigger, and these MIDI notes just have a lower chance. And so chance on the send trigger controls how often a note will be sent to the delay. Snare hitting controls the randomization of which one is selected. And I also have that, that expression control set to a couple parameters across these reverbs as well. So with that in mind, oh, and I also am randomizing between a few different snare samples, which gives us even more variety. So if I were to, how do I go about this? Up here, unmap this for a second and just turn up the send on the snare. Can I do that? Why can I not do that? Huh, interesting. I guess I will demonstrate it just by building one. So we're just going to mute this out, and let's just get started. I think it'll become clear what's going wrong as I put another one together, if anything is indeed. Let's grab a couple of my samples. I'm going to use my own so that I own everything in this and I can sell it on my Patreon. If you would like these racks, you can get them there, and I'm just going to put all of these samples up there pretty soon as well. These will be included in the project, but I think I'm going to go with that. Sure, why not? That's fine. The snare I'm going to do the same thing with, where we're moving between a couple of them. So let's get a sampler and grab a few snares, I think. All of those. And I like that. That big smack snare. Ooh, that's pretty nice. Ooh, that'll sound really cool through some delays, I think. And that'll be plenty. And then we may as well just set this to a random round robin, and that'll just choose different snares on its own without us having to do too much. Then let's get a little clip going. We'll stop this guy and let's give ourselves 2 bars and just boom. Okay. Boom. Boom. Okay, and maybe one right here as well. We'll give ourselves just a little bit of groove here so we're enjoying what we're playing with. And then this isn't really related to the technique, but I'm going to get some hats in there, and we're just going to use a white noise operator for that. I think that's fine. And up top, we'll just go. So we'll just tell you to be noise, high pass, and pretty quick. I think we're losing. Do we have to bring these out a bit? Okay, we're off to the races, and then I will just throw, just as a placeholder, we'll put a sampler on one of these up here so we can get our send trigger channel. We'll just call this send trigger. I am going to replace this sampler with probably a MIDI effect later, but for the time being, that'll do well. And now let's get into our returns, and we'll start making this delay rack. So first things first, let's just grab, let's start with an echo. Send our snare on up there. Give me my sends, please. Send our snare on up there. And I need to turn that off so I can hit this snare again and again without it always bringing me back there. We'll put our send up to 100. And I think I might like to add some wobble to this. And now we just have some fun. Now we're just designing some cool spaces and reverbs and things that we can throw this snare into. And I'm not going to overthink this one. That's probably fine. Let's do one with a... I really like using springs. There's some good spring reverbs in the hybrid reverb. Oh, I've accidentally sent... Okay, here's what's going on. I've accidentally sent that as a separate return. We only want one return, and on that one return, we're going to have a group with all of the things that we're going to be switching between. So here's our hybrid reverb. We'll solo this out. And let's get that spring. Is there a reason we're not hearing the effect on that? Oh, that's why. Silly me. All right. I really like that spring sound, and then we could also add, I don't know, let's say maybe a phaser. I am going to keep this as stock as I can if I haven't already mentioned that. I think that's cool. Let's go for one that's like a pitching delay. I want a really quick, tight little delay that's also pitching around a little bit. So let's unsync you. And then I'm going to, let's see. I will show you in a little bit what we're going to do with that one, because we're going to use the same expression control to change some parameters on some of these effects. And I think moving that guy is going to be a pretty cool one. We could do some that are not necessarily strictly delays. Let's see if we have any cool reverb presets we could go for. What is outer space? And then just to demonstrate that you can really kind of get pretty creative with these, I'm going to put a tremolo on that. I think that's cool. What else was I just thinking of doing? Let's get maybe another hybrid reverb with a really interesting character to it, and put a ring mod on it. Let's get what are bigger spaces. Actually, I'm going to blend this one and do a shimmer up top on that as well, just so we have some extra. I think that's cool. And then let's get that shifter on there. Ring mod that. And maybe move that around. That's cool. It's got kind of like a grainy texture to it. And then maybe something, let's do a softer delay, but with maybe like some redux on there. And I'm just trying to demonstrate that the sky is the limit with the effects that you can stack up. And then the more of them and the more different they are, the cooler it's going to be when we start randomizing them against each other. So let's have you be just a straight, let's go for like a 16th. And what else could we do to that? Can we mod the filter? Do we have to set the filter to something? That's cool. I like that. Let's give this a little noise. No, we don't want some noise on this one. And then I said I was going to redux that. So let's get that for just a little bit of noise. That's a cool bit of texture. All right, so we have, what do we have here? 6 of these. So we're going to set this chain up so that each of them occupies 1 space, beginning with 0. So we're going to go as high as 5. And then we're going to map this to one of our macros and tell it that it can only go as high as 5. So now we have 6 degrees of resolution on this knob, and only 1 chance for it to hit any of these. Then over here on our drum rack, we are gonna group this entire thing and tell it that. So there's our drum rack, and then we're gonna create another chain, and on that will be, I'll just use the standard expression control just for the sake of demonstration. I do prefer the old expression control. I think this new one with 12 just doesn't really hit for me. But for the sake of simplicity, we'll use it. We'll set you to D1, where our snare is hitting, and then this guy will be a fully random randomizer mapped to that chain selector. And now every time I hit a note, you can see that we're moving around between our different options here. Ooh, very cool. Okay, and then what we will do next is every time that one of those snare hits on our send trigger, we're going to throw a MIDI note, and we're going to set the chance. I'm going to leave the chance up right now so it happens every time just while we're working on it. But then on this send trigger channel, we're going to grab an envelope MIDI. At this point, we can get rid of this sampler. And we're going to map this. We'll drop the send level on that snare, and then on that send trigger, we're going to map that envelope MIDI to the send level of the snare. And now every time the snare hits, what note is that? So you can see that every time I push this MIDI note, you can see the send level right here gets flicked up and down, sending into that delay. And if I hit them both at the same time, and what's really cool is that because this is by note, you could do different racks of these on different kit pieces, and you could get really crazy with just a little bit of time in here. So now we can come back in here, and we'll turn the chance of these send triggers down to, let's say, like 40%. And now let's let this ride and see what we get. Nothing. There we go. There we go. Let's drag that. Oh, let's put that chance up a little bit. I was having this issue earlier. You'd think 40, you'd be getting more often than that, but apparently not. We're gonna rock it just above 50%. And then Let's drop this attack back, and we are getting like a full 2 seconds of flick into that, so I'm not sure why we're not getting so much of the effect coming through. Oh, well, for one thing, I'm going to start by throwing a glue compressor on the end of this entire channel, and we'll come back and we'll touch this up a little later, but we're just going to do a little squeeze and a little boost. Yeah, just a little more volume out of those. And then I did promise that we were going to use that randomizer to do a couple more things on some of these parameters. So let's take a look at that real quick. If we come back in here, this is one of the reasons I don't like the new one. You have to jump to these separate tabs to get into each of them. It's just a little less convenient, but we'll make it work. We will grab the time on this delay, and then we'll set that to be, I don't know, let's say like somewhere between 30% and 50s, and then we'll give it a little bit of ramp. And so now, every time that one hits, every time the snare trigger note hits, it's also going to randomly select a new delay time on this guy and ramp into it. So we'll get a little bit of like a repitching delay effect. I'm going to turn off this random just for a second, so I can just kind of sculpt that. Yeah. And then we can start doing the same kind of thing with some of these other effects. We could do, let's say we go to it would be number 4. We could also randomize the amount and the rate of the LFO on that guy. Let's just give that a shot. As I mentioned in the beginning, what I find inspiring about this is unpredictability and surprise. And so the more surprising things we have going on, ooh, yeah, and we'll randomize the rate of that as well. And then I will have to come back and set these here. And maybe some drive on that. That's kind of cool. That's kind of pretty cool. Okay, so let's come back in here. We'll say that you are fully random. This is on the amount of that LFO, so we always want some, but I never want full. And then on the rate of that LFO, I was kind of liking that going the full range. Maybe less. Okay, and then we have one more slot on this guy we could use. We could stack these up, which I do often. Let's go to... I think we'll leave that one alone. I think we're actually fine. You can stack as many of these effects as you want. You can randomize pretty much anything on them. Let's turn that random back onto... Let's set you back to that chain selector up here. Nice, I think that's great. And then we will do a glue compressor at the end. And then just throw it through a little bit of this reverb. Yes, nice. Very cool, very cool. So we've got a self-contained self-dub throw randomizing dubber thrower randomizer guy. And I think that's great. So I hope you enjoy the technique. I hope you enjoy playing with this. Patreon members can just get the project file as well as the samples that are in it, but I'm just going to put those samples, the whole folders I had on Patreon pretty soon as well. So thanks. If you enjoyed it, please do any of the things people like you to do with their channels, and see you next time.